Hey again. So, I'm back. It's been a minute again. I've been sick, cold, latest things going around. So, I am still working on my sunflower quilt. And I am getting closer to being done. So, here I will show you what I'm working at here. I'm going to tilt the camera down. Okay, so I'm working on the edge part of this and trying to stitch around the flower. So, what is everybody working on right now? I don't get to hear a whole lot about what everybody's working on. So, leave me a comment. Let me know what you're working on. I was stitching just around the tops of these. I wasn't going the whole way down to the center of the flower just because they're smaller and it takes a little bit more time. They do look nicer if you can do that, but sometimes I find it looks just as nice if you just do around the edges. So it's, your preference, whatever you like to do. When I first started quilting, I would quilt pretty much every inch of the quilt. I would cover everything. But since I've gotten older and my hand will hurt more the more I quilt, so I don't always stitch every little inch. Like, for instance, this green here, it's a small border, and I would probably follow the dots and do diagonal stitches like every 3 to 4 inches in there. But I really haven't decided if I want to do that yet. I'm going to finish everything else, and then when I look at it, I'm going to decide if I want to stitch that. It will look good even if I don't stitch it, but sometimes it bugs me if I do have a bigger area that I have not stitched, because I'm trying, I guess, to save time maybe, or if I just think it looks fine without the stitching. But sometimes I'll look at it later and I will think, I'm putting on my glove because my hand hurts right in here. The tendon gets stressed after I quilt a bit. But like this here, it's all very covered with words, so you don't see the stitches in it as much. But I did stitch every 3 inches, just a straight line. I could probably go up the center, and then that would create little squares in here. And I also used to stitch just the squares in the corner to make them stand out, make it look like it was a separate piece of material if you just stitch this square part. So I still might do that. And even in these little borders here, sometimes I would just stitch the little square. But also, I sometimes would come down from each section and then stitch the whole way down to the next section. And that would make squares and rectangles that look like they were separate pieces of material once you quilt that. So it's up to your own preferences. This time I just did around the borders and stitched in the ditches just the way the fabric runs, So you can get it to look different ways depending on what you do with your stitching. And also, even though this has dots running kind of diagonally. There's a lot of things you can do with this. I could do X's, or I could just go straight down, because you can connect the dots that way ever so many inches that you can see that there's dots going straight down. So you could do straight lines and make it look like they're little squares right in there, instead of one rectangular border. So it almost looks like once you stitch little squares in it, like every 2 to 3 inches, it makes it look like they're separate squares that you piece together. So, like I said, there's a lot of things you can do with your stitching to make your quilt look different even. But yeah, it's up to your own individual preferences as to what, you like to do with your quilt. But I am trying to get these little flowers done, and I'm going to have to move my hoop in a little bit because I don't have a whole lot of room to do, say, this little corner, because the leaf is cut off. And even over here, it's a little bit tight when you get right next to the hoop edge. So I'm going to move my quilt frame, hoop, before I try to stitch those. But right now I'm trying to get this little portion of a sunflower done. And sometimes when I do these little sections, it's kind of hard to take more than a couple stitches at a time, just because it's in the rim of the quilt hoop, if you can see it, and it's little petals, flower petals, so it's hard to maneuver the needle at times around the curves of the flower petal. But it's doable. Sometimes I take 1 or 2 stitches and that's enough. So if there's any other questions you guys have, just leave them in the comments. Also, I'm trying to get this one done so I can finish the one in my quilting frame that I showed you guys a few weeks back. So this thread, sometimes I get knots in it, so you have to kind of straighten out your thread a little bit before you take your stitches, because it will knot when you pull it through the fabric. I don't know if it's because it's heavier thread or what. It is a bold quilting thread. So it's a nice day out today. It's not too hot, not too cold. Did little errands this morning and came back and thought I'd make another video because I hadn't got one made last week. Okay, so if you do get a little knot in there, you take your needle, stick it in a little hoop and pull it, and it'll pop the knot for the most part. Sometimes the knot will get weird and you have to untangle it with your fingers. But for the most part, you can take your, like right there, got all bunched up, and then it'll go into a knot, and kind of have to pull it out with your hand. But usually I can take my needle and pull it with the needle, like put it in the loop, because it'll make a loop, and I can pop it out with the needle. So there you have it. But I usually I've been trying to work on stitching like hour, maybe a day. I don't work on them every day, but if you work a little bit at a time, hour, even a half an hour, you can get a good bit stitched in a half an hour. You can finish one fairly quickly. So, but some people don't have even that much time to give, but you know, I usually do it more so in the evening. Say if I sit down to watch TV, and then I'll get a little bit of time to quilt. But sometimes this is it's hard to see because I don't have the camera angled right. So this is like really tedious right here where the flower is. So you have to kind of go slow and take your time. It's not a real tiny flower, but it's just the fact that you're quilting around each little petal, and that's what makes it more tedious. Then we have this where it gets stuck around your pins. And you have to unstick it because the pin might stick out like this one, and I'll get my thread caught around it. But it's nice to have a quilting frame for bigger quilts. Sometimes it makes it easier to maneuver the bigger quilt because the bigger your quilt is, the harder it is to manage, you know, in a hoop, because you have all this excess material to like move around when you're trying to get your quilt positioned, you know, to do any quilting on it. But it's doable. I mean, it's not like you can't do a large quilt in a hoop because I've done it. It's just if you're a newer quilter, it might be easier to do it in a quilting frame just because you have a flat surface and you can see where you quilted. You can see it easier than otherwise you have to throw it out on a floor or across a bed in your little hoop. Take your hoop off to see, you know, where you need to move the hoop next, which I do. I throw this out on a living room floor, and that way I can see where I need to move my hoop to, or what spot I'm going to move it to next. So there we are. I got the edges done on this one. I'm going to, whoop, I got a knot underneath now. All right. I'm going to go between them and go to the brown area and quilt around this little center. Okay. I do have to say my little copper glove does help with the pain. I do like these. Now I haven't been using it with this only because I haven't been taking a lot of stitches, but when I was stitching the ditch, I'll stitch 5 to 6 stitches at a time, and sometimes my needle will slip through my fingers, and so I will take my little needle puller and grab a hold of it and pull it right through. So it helps to hold onto your needle. They're really nice to have. So if you don't have one, get yourself one, because the more you pull on the needle and the more it slips out of your fingers, the more strain you're putting on your tendons in your hand. So if you have a needle puller, you can just pull it right through. It catches it every time. It holds on to the needle. It doesn't slip off. Whereas with your fingers, sometimes the needle will slip off if the material's getting thick. Like it usually is thick in a ditch because of the layers of seam line that are in there. And sometimes you'll hit all of them at once because they might move when you put your quilt together. So it's easier to have a little needle puller to assist you. And these leather thimbles are also quite nice to have because I could never use a metal one, so these leather ones work pretty decent. Now this one used to have a piece of metal right here, and I always use them and wear them out, and then they fall out. So then I'll just turn them around, and you can see this one's also getting a hole worn in it, but I'll turn them around and use this side for a little bit until it gets a hole in it, and then I'll get myself a new one. But they're really nice to have. And also I use marking pencils that will just brush off pretty much. You can use a lead number 2 pencil, but the pencil marking is usually harder to get off. My video here is longer than I normally make it, but our internet is better, so it will load quicker, but I still don't like to make long videos to overwhelm everybody, because I know people don't have a lot of time to sit and watch your videos, so I figure the shorter, the better. And that way you can watch them real quick and, go about your day. So, there you are. All right, I will see you guys next time, and you guys keep quilting and have fun doing it. Bye.